Welcome back to Green Tagged Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. All right, Scott. So this week, we're going to talk a little bit about, I think, revenue generators, upcharging. That's the theme that we're looking at today. And you're going to wonder how I'm tying it in, but give me a little bit. Okay, so the first story here.
Oh, wait a minute. We have to kind of clarify this. One of the things that Philip and I do prior to each show, and when I say Philip and I, it's mostly Philip. But one of the things that we talk about is what can we tie these stories? How can we find a way to tie these stories together? And sometimes we are remarkably successful, and other times not so much. But with these particular stories, and also with what's been going on in with so many of my clients, is they're all trying to find new revenue streams. They're all trying to find new ways to generate revenue, either to capture the potential revenue if their attendance is up, or to make up for the loss of revenue if their attendance is down. And I have sat already this week in 3 different revenue stream brainstorming sessions with 3 different clients. So when these stories came out, we sat down and we said, let's make this relevant, because it's clearly something that's on people's minds, and it's clearly something that we can certainly talk about, because we've both been involved with these kinds of revenue generating opportunities. And it's not just, we need more t-shirts. So
Yep. Thank you. Well, look at that. See, Scott, that's why you're here. So
peace out. I'm done.
Okay. All right. We'll just replace Scott with a little like projection mapped statue, which we'll talk about that later. So first, gosh. Okay. Lunar New Year has returned to Disney California Adventure, and I went and visited it previously. So really, I don't want to get into the details of everything that is offered, because it's all the same and you can read about it, really anywhere. We'll only look at the new aspects here. And the new aspects are that the sip and savor passes have returned, but there's a new way of using them. In the old version, well, to take a step back, if you're not aware of what the sip and savor are, it's essentially Lunar New Year has a food tasting booth, because revenue generators. So we need to have food tasting booths for literally everything now. And the sip and savor passes are the little, it's where you order the bundle. It's the bundle that you order. And then in the past, you used to take off the tabs and manually do this whole tab thing. And now they're just barcoded. So you just scan they just scan the barcode to redeem the payment. So basically they're making it easier for you to be able to purchase more. That's the takeaway from that section. And then the only other things they've really changed is that added a little more character meet and greets. They have May and Ming Lee, which are there for the first time. And otherwise they've kept everything the same. So a few years back, what they did is they used to do the Mulan's processional, which was their kind of like cavalcade type of dance show that it used to showcase traditional Chinese and Taiwanese. They basically brought the Asian cultures together, and they performed dances from those areas, in like a celebration, right, with Mulan. Okay, what they've done is they have transitioned that into a parade, basically. So whereas it used to be a performance where people went and watched, now it runs along a parade route, and people line up on that route and watch that. So I think on that one, it's really. So here's the thing. I really think that also is relating to this revenue thing, because it's, what happens is it's a crowd suck from people when they're going to a show to watch a show and they're all standing in one place, they're going to a thing. Mm-hmm. Now people just stop whatever they're doing and go watch it as it goes by. Now all that, so those are the new things, and they've added a sugar art. They added some stalls to buy additional things, but otherwise they've kept all the activities. So here's my point about all of this. Whereas before, the processional used to really authentically showcase some of the dances, now it can't, because you cannot perform the same choreography when you are walking as when you're standing still. So it really, they've actually really taken out some of those essential components, like the lion dancers can't do that because they can't, the lion dance can't be done while you're like walking in a parade. So basically they've taken out a lot of that stuff, and they instead have moved it over to the Grand Californian. So in the Grand Californian, first of all, there's a giant dragon that is new this year that's like suspended up from the ceiling, a giant like paper dragon, classic dragon design sculpture, enormous. And then they have shows that almost a half-hour show, which is just a traditional dance show with performers that specialize in it. They lion dancers and ribbon dancers. They come out and perform the show there. They also have set up a little concession area in the hotel lobby that sells Lunar New Year snacks and add that all to the merch and whatnot. So it feels to me like, again, they've tried to make it easier in the park. They've tried to limit, I guess, the disruption in the park. Mm-hmm. And instead, they've moved those traditional elements over to the hotel, which really is just encouraging hotel guests. I mean, and then there's the concessions right there. And you can sit and watch a 30-minute show, and they have cocktails now that they can serve you in the lobby, which they, so it's kind of become, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it just because you know me, I don't want to, the cultural thing is it's a little weird to me where you're kind of turning it into a cavalcade and you're losing some of those essential elements. But I'm glad that it is in the hotel. It just feels like it's gate kept now, where it's like, I mean, it's not for me because I just sneak into the hotel and I have an old key where I just show them and pretend that I'm staying there every time I go there. So it doesn't impact me. But the regular guest that doesn't feel comfortable sneaking into a hotel they're not staying at is just not going to be able to see.
Yeah, I know. He won't be able to do that anymore. Just got a call from Disney there. Yeah.
But yeah, it just feels like it's a little bit gate kept, but I don't know. Such as
well, and again, is it gate kept or is it gate kept or is it right sized? I mean, that I don't know, and I can't answer that question because I've not experienced this. But I think it's important to recognize that, perhaps they felt, and I'm going to defend it slightly without having ever seen it, so I really don't know. But perhaps they felt that the environment of the Grand Californian is more conducive to a show style and a more controlled environment, a more intimate environment, where they can sell cocktails as you're watching it in the lobby of the hotel. There is all of that. But again, it's always interesting to see how cultural festivals are handled by theme parks, because I have clients who embrace even the certain holidays that are traditional American legal holidays. Some of them are more affiliated with religion or certain cultures, and they will either expand or contract based on their views of them, based on their clientele, based on who is going to enjoy them and how they're going to enjoy them. So this may be an attempt to do that. I don't know. But to your point, Philip, it sounds as though they're kind of pulling it from the park and making it a bit more concierge, a bit more.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
So I don't know, but that's kind of what I'm hearing in what you're saying here.
That is a good way of putting it. Yeah, a little bit more concierge, and that's all. I thought I would mention that. That was the biggest takeaway for me in how the event has just overall changed. Now, to be fair, but I mean, I've reported a few stories on how the cultural festivals are celebrated, around this area, and it's really not very different from what Disney does. Like, to give them credit, I mean, if you were to go to the one here in Los Angeles or the one down in San Diego, even, I've been to all of them, kind of compare and contrast all of them. I mean, they have the same elements. It's like you have the traditional dances from the different cultures, and really, since they're done in parks mostly, I mean, the stages are just risers, which is not much different from what they're doing inside the hotel, really. I mean, it's really, it boils down to the same thing. And then you have carts with snacks, and you have calligraphy, you have sugar art, you have wish making, and you have those kind of things. I mean, and they've incorporated all of that, into it. So to give them credit, it really does kind of, I think, hit all of the. I'm sure that's what they did. It's the same thing as me, is go and study and see what people were doing at cultural festivals, and then just make sure that they hit everything correctly. But
yeah.
Yep. So anyway, okay. The next story here: The Giant is coming to American Dream. Something big is coming to American Dream, as The Giant is expected to debut in January 2025. Standing at 54 feet, or just over 5 stories, the giant will be one of the world's tallest moving statues. It can mimic the appearance of anyone. The figure is a custom skin of video LEDs using patented LED AI and bespoke scanning technologies. The statue's arms and head are expected to be capable of fluid movements, instantly transforming into a mesmerizing array of spectacular images. Every hour, the giant will put on a show for the mall's visitors as it transforms into any of the folks that they have listed there. So kind of like giants of our time, basically it transitions through them. And there's going to be an exhibit that is called the Giant Experience that guests can go through and whatnot. And I think that this is where it gets into what Scott was talking about, because the show itself and the giant is going to be free to attendees, but the exhibit is an upcharge. And it seems like there might even be more upcharges within that upcharge. So Arthur Levine in his glorious newsletter did do a write-up about this, and he had some points in here. I'll read 2 of them. He says, for what I'm guessing might be an additional fee. Guests will also be able to have their scanned likeness displayed on the giant. I am guessing that he is correct about his guess, in that there's no way they're going to allow people to scan and put their likeness on there without charging for that, because it's a capacity issue at that point. Right. And then his second point is that the giant will also be used as a giant billboard to hawk stuff, or what the press release labeled as a platform for brand celebration. Yes. Brand celebration. We can celebrate brands. So my really quick thought on this is that it's basically the Sphere.
Only it's human shaped.
Only it's human shaped, right? And that's exactly what we saw with the Sphere, really, because even the Stranger Things, in some cases there are actual ads, which are terrible taste, in my opinion, but just projected on there. But, all of the other, the Stranger Things, when it was before that came out, and using it in concerts, and just it's really, I think the only thing that might make this different, aside from concept-wise, it's very similar, but in terms of, again, the immersive or the individualization, in that if you can project your likeness onto it, that is that kind of like individualization, personalization type of piece of the experience, is something you can't do on this. Well, not yet on the Sphere, but I'm sure eventually you can. So
well, and what I think is interesting about this is, so this isn't, if I'm not mistaken, this is an Irish company that has started doing this, and
the giant company,
and so this is not the only place that the giant will appear. This is the first to get a really major PR boost. And to my knowledge, the first to do an actual permanent installation of it. There are other versions of this that are being developed that will show up at different locations, again, as sort of a quote unquote pop-up with the giant experience. The thing that I think is interesting about this is anytime you're talking about retailtainment, because remember, this is in a mall. Anytime you're talking about retailtainment, the goal is to keep people there longer, because the longer they stay, the more likely it is that they'll remember, oh, I got to pick up this, or, oh, that reminds me I should go see this. So it is a perfect opportunity to create something that guests can't really see anywhere else. So instead of going to their local mall, they may drive 20 minutes, 30 minutes further. Or if they happen to be in town, it becomes then an attraction to go to the mall, which this mall already is, but it's yet another reason to go. And it's funny because when they talk about, the giants that this will become, one of them is like a gigantic version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. People, recognizable characters that will talk to you as a 5-story version of themselves. If you're still having trouble visualizing what it is, think of it as a giant jumbotron wrapped around a 5-foot-tall statue. Yeah. When it says animated, I think we need to clarify that as well. From what I've seen because I've only seen concept animations of this as opposed to actual footage of it in operation. But from what I've seen in the concept animation, the head has limited movement at the neck. It's not multiple joints. and the arms basically move up and down from the shoulder and perhaps from the elbow, but I've not seen that yet. So again, like we talked about last week, the difference between concept art and actual art or actual creation here, we'll have to see how that turns out. As far as I love the term platform for brand celebration. I think that is a very clever way of
someone
phrasing
deserves a raise for that. Let me tell you.
Yeah, there's a PR person right there who's now starting their own company just because they came up with that phrase. The platform for brand celebration, I think, is interesting. What I'm hoping is that because it is such a creative and unique way of sharing information, that they will actually take the time to create something that is unique and fun, that utilizes this giant video statue in a way that is better than, well, we've got some pre-produced iMag something or other that we're just going to play across its chest. I'm hoping that it plays with the dimensionality of it and that we see a little bit more artistic and creative use. Because quite honestly, I think that will help people from doing a little bit of eye rolling when Nike or Microsoft or whomever, Apple, decides to advertise on it. It needs to be cool. Yeah. It needs to be cool. So I'm hoping that kind of execution works out well.
This is... So again, I feel like I always have to preface everything by saying like concept versus reality. I think the concept of this is very smart. And even down to the brand platform, blah, blah, whatever. I mean, even in its simplest fashion, you could have the Giants then they're wearing Nike shoes, or you could have them wearing apparel from somebody, or you could have them with an Apple shirt. I think like it can be easy. It can scale easily up to complicated, do a whole custom show, right? That's important. And the whole experience, you're creating something truly remarkable that people want to come to see. So you've captured attention, and that's what really sells advertising is attention, no matter how you slice it. So if it's going to get attention, it's going to be good for advertisers. And you found a way to be able to incorporate it from a scale where it's not very noticeable, like the type of clothes they're wearing, up to a full commercial. So I think that scalability, and then also having people be able to pay to learn more and have the extra experience and blah 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 blah. Like there's a lot of revenue streams in this, so I think that conceptually it's an excellent concept for all those elements.
And once it gets established, I think one of the things that would be super cool is if they were to incorporate RFID technology and then do light up wands that contribute to the show, that reinforce, so that you could have the statue make a movement and then it would send sparkles out through the light up wands and the surrounding. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities here. It is a big thing that is cool in and of itself, but can then be, as Philip was saying, can then be scaled up or ramped up to become a full show.
We'll just see. We'll have to see what it tends, because again, how I think a lot of this, with the sphere on the outside, people. Like the sphere works best looking at the outside when you're really far away, because up close, the resolution is very low. So I'm just curious to see what the reality is going to be. Are you going to be able to is it going to be detailed enough so that you can actually make out, it's going to be like watching a movie where you can see the details enough that it, looks that cool and they're moving. Like that could be phenomenal, or it could be a pixelated mess, right? Like honestly, it did not look good in the concept video. I mean, like the robot voice, I was like and then the only other thing I'm going to throw in here, I'm sure they're going to solve this, and I'm just being crazy, Philip, but my only other concern would be just the intellectual property kind of, I mean, if they are using the likeness of people, to make all this money, I'm really hoping that those people are getting compensated for that.
Well, that's why I think there's in the press release they mentioned specific people.
Yeah,
and
hopefully they have deals with them.
in order to mention those specific people, they already have deals penned with them so that they can do that, and so that they can use it as a promotional tool as well. The other thing that I think of is maintenance. Now, maybe I'm just getting way too down the rabbit hole here, but the moment one of those areas goes out, it becomes it's just like if you go to a pixel Christmas tree display and you've got a block where that it just goes, it ruins the whole thing.
Are you thinking about that time we went?
I am not thinking about anything. I am I am not mentioning any specifics, but if that happens, it is clear that it just sort of upends the whole thing, and you've got to make sure that every single pixel and every single screen and every single block is working the way it's supposed to. And I would imagine that the maintenance on this would be the same as the maintenance on some sort of pixel tree or pixel structure, and you just need to make sure that is worked into the plan, and I'm sure it is. That's why it's an outside company. Sure it is.
Sure it is.
Okay. Sure it is. Yeah, right.
All right. Next up, the Skyride attraction reopened Friday at Busch Gardens Tampa Bay in Florida. The cable car experience gives riders a chance to view the theme park's attractions, including the Serengeti plane, while ascending to heights of 50 feet above the ground. A roller coaster called Phoenix Rising will debut this year at the park as well, so you'll be able to also see that. The thing that made this story interesting, though, is that the attraction will be $5 for guests, although Tampa Bay pass members can ride for free.
Yeah, this is interesting, and it's not something completely foreign to the I can't call them SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment Parks anymore. It's now United Parks and Resorts. Is that correct?
I think that's it. The FCC is still looking at it.
Yeah, so. there's a new name. There's a new name for the parent company. But Busch Gardens and SeaWorld will still be called Busch Gardens and SeaWorld. Anyway, this is not new for what used to be called Busch Entertainment Corporation, because the SeaWorld Park in Orlando, for example, had a Skytrek tower basically that was an upcharge, and so I think this is an opportunity for them to look into the possibility of doing this. Now, we'll see how local residents react to all of a sudden being charged for something that used to be included with the park admission. Although, at the same time, the local residents may be the pass holders. I don't know. I'm curious. Is this going to be... And the interesting thing about it is, if you know the park at all, the Skyride is actually... or was actually used as a form of transportation to get from one side of the park to the other. So in digging a little bit deeper into this story, I found out that it's actually $5 to go in one direction and $5 to go back in the other direction. So it's not a round trip. It takes you from the front of the park basically to the back of the park. And I will say, though, that as someone who I actually worked in the park when it was running as an attraction that was just included. I'm glad it's coming back because it does give an incredible view of the Veldt, of the Serengeti plains. It will give an incredible view of not one but two of the major roller coasters there, and it's interesting. I'm guessing. And this is just speculation on my part, but I'm guessing that the reason for the upcharge is, as far as attractions go, it is a very labor-intensive attraction. Because loading, unloading, there is also a turn point that requires additional staffing. So I think they had to figure out, how do we justify reopening it and bringing on that additional staff to make it work? And then hopefully generate some additional revenue over and above. But I think the reason that I think it's important we include this in this particular show is bringing back, or even all of a sudden charging for an attraction that already exists, a viable revenue stream. The fact that it's been gone, I think, helps. The fact that it hasn't been in operation for quite some time helps. So it's coming back fresh, and people are like, "Oh yeah, I love that as a kid." Wait, I have to pay for? It's just $5. Okay. So I think it's going to be I think it's going to be fine, but I'm very curious to watch this, and then I'm curious to see what other things all-inclusive parks are going to try to get upcharges for.
Yeah. Well, the people that would complain about it are going to get it for free.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're going to be. It's kind of like that. We talked about this too, but the concept of theme park memory, right? Where at some point people are going to forget that Disneyland didn't have reservations, right? I mean, there's kind of like you train people in a way, and I think that time works for the parks in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, the people who it's been closed for like 3 years. I mean, think 4 years. I mean, people are gonna the people that are gonna remember are gonna be the pass holders, and they're gonna get it for free. So they're not going to complain.
And as you say, theme park memory, and it's interesting though, because you've also heard me say for many years everything is cyclical, or everything has a pendulum effect. So there are people who don't remember and weren't even born when Disney had the e-ticket events,
the e-tickets,
the e-ticket rides, or A, B, C, D, and e-ticket rides. So you pay a small amount to get in, and then you paid for each attraction. And usually what you would do is buy a book of those tickets. And, and anybody who's listening who's a theme parkaholic has tried to buy one of those books on eBay, I know. But if you can find an unused book of tickets, you can retire. But so as you say, it's to me, it's kind of that pendulum swinging back going, well, can we do this? Can we charge for individual experiences? And this is a discussion, again, with a couple of my clients, and it has come up in the brainstorming event, or brainstorming meetings, is can we charge for this thing? And if we change, how much do we have to change it before we can charge for it? So this is unique. And I think the change is it's back. I think that's the big change here at Busch Gardens. I'm excited because, again, when I'm home, I live literally 15 minutes from the park. So I'm looking forward to going back and riding it again because I'm a pass holder. So there you go.
So you get it for free.
I get it for free. Woo!
Okay, something that no one will get for free is our last story here is the Monster Makeover experience has opened at Universal Studios Orlando. Universal Orlando has opened the Monster Makeover Become the Monster experience at Universal Studios Florida. Guests can choose from 38 options of different monster makeovers, which are done by one of Universal's makeup professionals, the same people that actually work on the Halloween Horror Nights effects. Guests must make a reservation, and it is $125 plus tax for the full face, or $65 for the half face. There's a great video from our friend Kevin Heimbach over in Orlando about the whole process, and I will say it looks like they've done a little bit of work, at least to make it a more themed environment. I mean, the real. It is great. It is. I think haunt people would be like, there's something special. But just keep in mind, we're used to, rubbing elbows with people from Face Off, all the time. So our it's a little bit different for us, but it looks good. It is good. It's the makeup quality is something you would expect to see in a queue line character at a good haunt. So it is high quality. It's very good, detailed work. It does take an hour plus, a few hours to do it. And they've created like a themed makeup room. So you enter into this like a Universal Monsters kind of curated little cool themed makeup room to have the process on. And then you can walk around the park with it, like all day. So you just hang out at the park, do all your regular park stuff. So it's not a new concept, but because we've had the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, obviously, and stuff like that.
Or this could be the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique.
Yep, that joke's been made. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I know. I'm sorry, Scott. But what I think what's interesting to me about it is, again, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, so they're trying to keep their makeup artists on full time so they don't have to rehire every season. So they're trying to come up with a way to pay their salary. And maybe that's pessimistic. A lot of people
I think
talk
that's
about
good. I think that's good business. I mean, we've talked about staffing challenges for the last 2 years, and if you can get your makeup artists on and give them full time
like a permanent salary, yeah,
absolutely. There are construction companies in theming companies in Orlando that started doing Halloween just to keep their guys on staff so they wouldn't go work for somebody else. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of it. I think it's recognizing, I love to hear that they actually have a makeup room so that it's not just a slap together thing, because really you're not paying $125 for the makeup. You're paying $125 for the memory and the experience and the process.
Yep.
And, it's no different than the Bippity Bobbity Boutique, which is, again, made to look really adorable. It is a full out experience that ends with a makeup job that you can then get compliments on throughout the rest of the day. It's a great brag tag. And a perfect revenue generator.
And I will add that there's a few, Kevin mentioned a few things. It's a great video, but a few things, I think I kind of agree with him where it could be tweaked, where if they told more of, if they kind of like talked more about how the process, what they're doing relates to Horror Nights, I think it could be a better tie-in, which probably would be better, other than just kind of the makeup. We've seen 100 times, right? As haunters, you sit in the makeup room and just, it's like therapy. So just whatever you're talking about. I think a more guided discussion could be more appealing to people because some people just don't ask questions. And then also Dark Universe. I think this is also a product or like a concept test for Dark Universe, because I could see this doing really well there.
And I would actually like to see, instead of the focus being on Horror Nights, the focus being on the history of whatever character they've chosen, and more about the cinematic side, because that really ties back into the day brand of the park, and not just specifically the Horror Nights end. But either way, I think, all this stuff can be tweaked, and I think you're absolutely right. I think this is beta testing. But we are long past beta testing, because we've been doing this show now for 30 minutes. Haha. So it's time to, that was a weak transition. Anyway, it's time for us to go nonetheless. So thank you once again for joining us here at Green Tag Theme Park in 30 on behalf of Philip with Gantom Lighting and Haunted Attraction Network, and myself, Scott Swenson with Scott Swenson Creative Development. This, as I just said, is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we will see you again next week.